Sa Dec was a little market town on the river, maybe 10,000 people, and it was the provincial capital, and the province was divided then into 4 districts, sort of like each was like a county might be in the United States, populated with little village towns, maybe 8 or 9 villages, and then made up of farmers, peasant farmers who were rice farmers in rural areas. Now, to understand exactly where I was and what I was doing, you have to know a little bit about the structure of the U.S. government. So in Vietnam, there were American military units. There were divisions of American troops, just as there had been in Germany and Japan and World War II. And they're out fighting their own fights. The Big Red One, the 23rd Division, the 5th Division, American troops out fighting North Vietnamese and Viet Cong battles. There was also a South Vietnamese army, referred to as the ARVN, A-R-V-N, Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And that paralleled American divisions. There were South Vietnamese divisions. And each of those had American military officers and personnel as advisors. So there are American advisors deployed with the South Vietnamese troops. South Vietnam was then also divided into 44 provinces. So the American divisions, the ARVN divisions, they could go anywhere. They'd be sent to areas where the North Vietnamese were particularly strong. But within the 44 provinces, there were local Viet Cong and local forces, and there was a war going on there. And there was a South Vietnamese governmental structure, civilians and military, and that structure was headed by a province chief. And the province chief was a South Vietnamese army officer, usually at the rank of about colonel. And there was a parallel American military civilian advisory program. And that was known as MACV-CORDS. So MACV stood for Military Assistance Command Vietnam, and CORDS stood for Civil Operations Revolutionary Development Support. So the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, they sent personnel to be part of this American advisory structure in each province. And the civilian side of the U.S. government, the State Department, USAID, the U.S. Information Agency, sent civilians to work in each province. And because the South Vietnamese civilian governmental structure and military structure were integrated, so too was the American advisory structure. So in each province, there would be a provincial senior advisor, and about half of them, they would be military officers, in which case they had a civilian deputy, and in the other half, the provincial senior advisor would be an American civilian, a Foreign Service officer, a USAID officer, and in those cases, he would have a military deputy. Then at the district level, that is at the county level, there would also be an American advisory structure. But those were originally entirely U.S. Army, U.S. military. But as the civilian presence grew, a few civilian officers who had been trained in the language would be assigned to be part of a district advisory team. And so I was, since I had been trained for 10 months in Vietnamese, and my Vietnamese was still quite halting, I was assigned to be a district advisor, and I became a district senior advisor. As a civilian, I headed a 10-man U.S. Army military advisory team. It would end up getting me into a number of unusual circumstances, and In this assignment, I learned a number of incredible lessons. Lessons not only about Vietnam, but lessons about my own country. Even though I was 12,000 miles away, sometimes you can see something about your country you don't see when you're at home close up. And so here I was, not in an embassy in Europe, not at the embassy in Saigon, not in a civilian headquarters in a regional capital. Here I was, deployed out in sort of a ramshackle structure, temporarily set up with some tin roofing and screens and concrete bunkers, living in a district capital, heading a district advisory team made up entirely of U.S. Army officers and sergeants. It was an amazing and unexpected adventure.